equally liable for the entire obligation. So whether, if there's multiple owners within a company, or the assets of the company balance sheet versus the personal balance sheet of the owners, each owner is equally responsible to provide recovery to the surety. Whether one owner is much wealthier than the other, whether they have the same amount of wealth, whatever the disparities are, each owner and the company balance sheet itself is equally responsible to make the surety whole in the instance of a loss. So, it's a pretty big commitment and path to go down establishing a surety relationship. But again, it's the lifeline and what's needed to participate in public taxpayer-funded work. And most of the times the surety is a partner. The agent that you work with is a partner. So it's constant communication and understanding of exactly where everything is at for yourself as a construction company, from financials, work in process, all that kind of stuff, to really work through in a full partnership to understand, if a job coming up makes sense, where everything is that big picture, so you'd never have to run into these issues or get into this process with the surety. The surety wants to see everybody win just as much as you do want to see you win yourself as a contractor. Just kind of any questions on exactly the parameters of the surety relationship here? Great. With that, thank you again, everybody, for your time and for participating in this section. Again, my name is Max Lehman. I'm the account executive here on the surety team at American Global in our Florida office, and happy to share my contact information and help you guys as small business contractors establish the surety bonding relationship and program that you need to support your business.
Thank you, Max. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, Max, Stephen, for explaining about surety bond. As you said, a surety bond protects your business and your clients if something goes wrong. And that's our first topic for today. Actually, this session is divided into 3 parts. The first part is about surety bond, and we heard from Max how important it is for some of our contractors to obtain a surety bond in order to show you're financially stable. Someone is backing you up and giving you a financial guarantee if something went wrong. The second part of this is about small business loans, which will actually help us get started with our business and also keep your business running. And the third part will be about understanding pay application. As you know, understanding a pay application process helps you keep money flowing in your business. So I would like to introduce our second guest for today. Our guest is Arturo Flores. He's an Associate Managing Director for the Community Development Division within the CIBC Bank USA. He brings 19 years of extensive experience in the financial industry, including a role as a business banker and sales support for 55 branches across Southeast Florida. His hands-on experience has been instrumental in shaping his expertise. At CIBC Bank USA, he is dedicated to driving community development initiatives, leveraging his passion for assisting startup companies and small businesses qualify for lending to foster growth and prosperity within Palm Beach County. Let's all welcome Arturo Flores.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Arturo.
I'm excited to be here. It's excited to see such a big group learning to gain more knowledge around small business and how to grow your business, be successful.
Thank you, Arturo, for joining us today. So today we're going to talk about 3 topics. We will start with understanding financial readiness, moving to securing small business loans, and then improving credit worthiness. So let's start with the basics. So how do you define financial readiness for a small business seeking a loan?
In general, we look at the 5 C's of credit. So we look at capacity, character, collateral, capital, and conditions. Beyond that, it's a conversation we like to have with the business owner to understand where the business is, what phase of business they're in, and how the loan is going to assist them. So looking at capacity, that's going to let us know that you have the ability to pay us back. The character is how you've been making payments with your current debts. Collateral is what you have in the business, what assets, whether you have equipment, you have a building, what collateral is available for us to lean against to loan you the money, secure that will be paid back. The capital is what you've put back into the business, what you're leaving in the business. Banks don't like to lend to businesses showing a loss. A lot of times startup companies get into business and they like to write things off and they show a loss to keep costs down, whether it's offsetting the business taxes or their personal taxes, because in a small business, most of the debt or the business is passed over to the personal tax return. So we like to see that there's money being made and profitability, and that you're using the funds accordingly. If we see part of the capacity is if we see that you're maxing out credit cards, you're making minimum payments on things, those are red flags to us, meaning you're overextending your funds. Either you're not using it, the use is not being used the right way. The funds are not, you're not recouping the costs that are going out. So whether your profit margins need to be tightened up. So we look at all these. So the 5 C's of credit is really the bigger picture, and then we dive deeper into it. My favorite one I like to look at, which nobody can control, is the conditions. Depending on the time of year, depending on what's going on with the economy and the market, it may not be a good time to apply for lending. It may need to wait 3 or 4 months. So understanding what is going on in the market, what's going on with your business, how your profit margins work, where the money's being used, is how we determine if you're lendable or not. It's the comfort level the lender feels. Now everything's based on relationships, so the lender has to feel comfortable. And we use the 5 C's of credit. Some people use the 6 C, which is the credit report, because again, as a small business owner, you are guaranteeing the loan to the business. So if the business fails, you're stating you will pay that back. So your personal credit has to look good too. Your payment, your usage of funds has to be used accordingly. And we want to see a good, clean history around it. Any red flags that come up, you need to be spoken upon. If there's a foreclosure, if there's something that's gone south, don't hide it from the lender. Bring it to the forefront, explain and address it, and make them feel comfortable. The lender is here to help you qualify for a lend, help paint the picture to the underwriters who ultimately make the decision on whether you're lendable or not. But the lender is the one that paints the pictures, and we base it off the 5 C's of credit.
So what common mistakes do you see business owners make that signal that, they're not financially ready for funding?
For funding, well, all small businesses self-fund, meaning they use their personal credit cards, they use their savings or 401k, and then they come to a bank when those resources have been exhausted. And at that point, it's impacted the credit score. With business lending, because it's a business, the credit requirements are a lot higher. In most cases, to qualify for a business loan, you need a 680 or higher credit score. And you could have the perfect credit on the business side, but as the guarantor, your credit has to be just as good. And once we start seeing credit cards being maxed out, that tells us that you're short on funds, that something's going on. There's something going on behind the scenes that we don't know. And it makes it harder for us to lend to you. It makes it harder for us to paint the picture to the underwriter of the financial situation, the stability within the company.
Okay. And what types of loans are most accessible for small or newer businesses that you are offering at CIBC?
So SBA loans usually for small startup companies I'd say the biggest resource for startup companies, because they're willing, it's a government-backed loan, willing to fund startup companies. Since the pandemic, there's been many programs come out. A lot of banks have started micro lending programs. Like for example, at CIBC, we've got loan programs. If you graduate from a course that you're attending now, that we can provide financing up to $10,000 based on the certificate and the effort you put in to graduate. But we have programs for startup companies where loans, our credit scores down to 600, loans up to 100,000. We charge no fees for them. And this is to assist the startup company grow their business, to help them the cash flow. We know cash flow is very tight. So when you're picking a loan, you need to consider the cash flow, the repayment, the usage of it. There's many loans out there. You've got to do your research and understand what's out there and what's going to be what you're going to qualify for and what's going to be the best loan for you. I see many small businesses take something they call it a factoring loan, and that's a loan against your credit card processing company or against your bank account, where the lender bases it on bank statements and they pull money on a daily basis to repay that loan that they lent to you. What ends up happening, if it was a short-term debt where you're going to recoup the money within 20 days and pay them back, but that's usually not the case. You took the loan because that was the quickest and easiest way for you to get the funds, at which point didn't realize that they're pulling in their payment every day, which is going to impact the money you have to use to continue running your business. And if you didn't factor in that they're taking $300 out of your account on a daily basis, and you only make $500, so that only leaves you $200 a day to operate, you just put yourself in a worse position than you were in before. So you really just have to understand the types of loans out there, the payments, and what your affordability is.
Okay. And there's a question in the chat asking, do you recommend taking a loan for renting a local?
Renting a local business?
Tanya, can you please unmute and clarify your question? Tanya Esten? For a business, do you recommend taking a loan for renting a local business? I am an esthetician.
So if you're, again, it all depends.
It's on location, right?
Your location.
Location.
If it's going to generate you income, so you need to consider all the factors. Again, it's a storefront, maybe the foot traffic. It will increase your profitability, increase the revenue, increase the sales because now you have more exposure. So if you're taking a loan out, we'll say it rents $2,000 a month, but it increases your clientele by 10, and now after that 2,000, you're making a profit of $500. Then I would say yes, it is profitable and a good reason to take it out because it's increasing your sales, it's increasing your bottom line, and it's increasing your exposure. So it's taking you to the next step. A lot of times small businesses can't get to the next step because their profit margins are so small. And in order to increase the profit margins, they have to take a loan out. So, for example, if you're paying $500 for inventory, and for every piece of inventory, on that $500, you make $600. And you're stuck in that cycle. Every month you put out $500, you make $100. It's going to take you a year's time, maybe a little longer, to recoup enough to buy a larger percentage of inventory. If you went to the bank and said, hey, I need a loan for $5,000, and went to your vendor and said, hey, I'm not buying $500 worth of inventory anymore, I'm going to buy $5,000. Instead of making $100 worth of profit on that, they've now decreased their cost of inventory because you're buying in bulk. So now on those 500 units, you're making 250, so you've doubled your profits. And you factor in the interest rate, you're still making more money than you were. And if you've got a plan in place to save that and increase, then over time that $5,000 will turn into 10. The profits will increase. You'll be able to expand the business. So you have to identify where your opportunity for increasing profit, increasing sales, increasing exposure, which in turn will increase your sales, your profits, and understand if I do this, how much more money am I going to make? I always tell people, listen, you have to understand what it costs you on a daily basis to live, to pay your personal bills, and what it costs to pay your business. Because as a business owner, you've got now two sets of expenses, your personal and the business side. And understand that you've got to make enough money to cover both. A lot of times small businesses rob from one side to pay the other, rob from the other to pay the other, and they're caught in a cycle that they can never get out of. So understanding what your profit margins are and how to increase them will make life a lot easier, and the life cycles go in phases and stages, and you can look at a bit at your business plan. Hopefully everybody has a business plan and go, look, this is my goal in this rubber, and be able to gauge what you're doing because you see the profits, and then make a decision. Hey, this is time for me to go borrow money because I have an opportunity to decrease my costs, increase my profits, and in turn grow my business.
Okay. In other words, they need to show that they're making profits in order for them to, apply for more.
Yes. So every bank has a different risk rating. So sometimes it's a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning like depending if you're a startup company, under a year in revenue, we will look at a 1-to-1 ratio. As long as you're breaking even, for every dollar spent, you're making a dollar recouping it, you're lendable. Some banks want a 1-to-5 ratio, meaning for every dollar spent, you better be recouping 5 to be lendable. So just understanding where your profit margins are, it will help determine what type of loan to qualify for and what your options are as well.
Okay, we have so many questions. Crystal, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, I was asking if you get awarded a contract, what type of products does CILB offer for those type of?
So good question. I get this question all day long, especially in all the educational programs around here, because everybody talks about bonding, government contracts, and being awarded. These are things that should be in place before you have the contract. Most banks will not lend based on a future contract because that future contract is never guaranteed. So the lending, the financing needs to be in place beforehand. So if you're going out and bidding on a contract, the 5 C's of credit come into place on your side, and your understanding. You need to understand what your capacity is. You need to know where your credit is. If you're going after a large contract and you're going to need lending, your credit better look good. You better understand when the credit cards report to the credit bureaus. Is that before you pay down the credit cards, or is it after you pay down the credit cards? So it's understanding all sides of things, but in reality, if you're going after a contract, a lot of times they're going to be a lot larger than what a bank's going to lend to you. A bank lends 10% of your gross revenue for a line of credit. So that's 45 days working capital. So that's across the board at every bank I've ever worked at. If you come to me asking for a line of credit, the quick calculation is 10% of your revenue. So if you make $1 million, it's 100,000. If you make 160, that's 16,000. And a lot of times, the smaller companies are only making 100, maybe 200,000. They come asking, "Hey, I need a $100,000 line of credit." I turn around and go, "I can only give you maybe 20, maybe 25." A line. We have to get pretty creative with what we're doing. So a lot of times, depending on what the business is, I go, this is where your business credit comes into place, with making sure that you're registered with Dun & Bradstreet, making sure you've created business credit, because I go, well, I can give you 25. You really need 50 to feel comfortable. How about you reach out to your vendors and see if they can extend a net 30 or a net 60 days, so that between my 25 and what they're extending, we can get you to the 50 where you need to be to fulfill the contract. It's not the best situation, but again, it's getting creative with the numbers and trying to make things work so that you can feel comfortable enough to go after that contract or that bid with confidence. But it should be put in place beforehand.
Keep in mind, it's I keep going back to the relationship aspect and track record. If you build up, if you develop a trust level, if you show a history, people will, there's limits, like there's an upper limit, there's a lower limit, but those limits tend to get a little larger, and you tend to be able to get to the upper limits when you show that trustworthy, when you have that relationship, when you build up to it. So if you know you want to go after larger contracts, much larger than you have, or get equipment if you're in a certain business and doing things, the better way is not to just sort of get money. It's sort of like your own credit card, not to ask for all the money when you need it the most desperate time, but to work up to it and also show the history. If you get a loan and don't necessarily max it out and use it and clearly not default, it also allows you to show a history of being responsible with that, which all those things factor in to be able to get, because what you're trying to do, and Arturo has made a great comment, is like, if you're 100,000, you may only get, 15 to 20,000, or he said, maybe able to push it up to 20,000. When you're able to push it up, that's because he's able to demonstrate there's responsibility, there's a history there. So even though the numbers may not back up, or that's the upper range, there's other factors that are in your aspects. So the best thing is to have those relationships, talk about those plans, and people like Arturo will help you map out how to get there, or what steps you need to do to get there.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Prepare. You need to prepare as well, in order for you to get that loan from a lender. So there is a question here. I think we're moving into credit. If a business has low credit, what practical steps can they take to begin improving it today?
Make sure that the EIN number and the Dun Bradstreet number is registered with all the vendors that they've got relationships with. Pay attention to who's reporting, how they're reporting. Pay attention how you're making your payments. Like I said, like with credit cards, the statement date is the date that they report to FICO, which generates a credit score for everybody. Now, if you're making a payment after the statement date, and a lot of times your due date may be after the statement date, every time they report to FICO, you're showing a maxed out credit card, even though you pay it off every month. But when they report, so understanding the reporting habits of your vendors and who you're using, and what's been extended to you. Maybe you just don't have enough credit extended to you, so it's impacting you negatively because you're maxing it out every month. So just maybe asking for an increase on your credit being extended to you, but just understanding with business credit as a small business owner, your personal credit's coming into play. The business credit and the personal credit, the debts, whatever the business debt has doesn't impact the personal credit, but the personal credit does impact the business debt. So understanding you could have a horrible business debt, which again, what that does would tell banks that, I may not want to lend to you. And then you may have the best personal credit and come in and apply and still qualify. But if you have great business credit and horrible personal credit, you guys will never qualify for a loan. So you've got to understand you've got to manage both of them, because at the end of the day, you're guaranteeing whatever the business debt is. So really, it's a juggling of both. And until you get to a bigger, upwards of a couple $1 million in revenue, then that's really when the business credit's going to come into place and how your usage and what's going on with the business. But as a small company right now, the business credit's going to be more for vendors for the net 30, net 60 days, for credit card offers like that. It's with the lending side, you're going to have to guarantee it. So make sure the personal credit is just as good as the business credit and that you're managing both equally.
Is there a recommended percentage of, usage for line of credit?
With a line of credit, so what banks like to see with a line of credit is you revolve it. The biggest mistake small businesses do, and all businesses in general, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I'm always amazed when I actually see a business revolve their line of credit. Most businesses take out a line of credit and they don't use it the right way. Again, it's used for 45 days working capital and should be paid back. Sometimes it may take 6 months to pay it back, but they revolve it. That's like Max was saying, a line of credit is good for 1 year and 1 year only. We can extend it the following year and the following year and the following year as a never-ending loan, but it has to be used properly. And the why we review things on an annual basis, to make sure you're revolving it, make sure you're using it properly. A line of credit, you pay interest only on it, so it helps with your cash flow. So it keeps the payment as low as possible until you recoup some money so you pay us back, so that it doesn't impact the day-to-day operations by you using that money. And business owners forget, they go, I'm going to pay the $67 on a monthly basis. Then they sit down with me the following year to review their loan. I look at tax returns. I see they take out more debt because I can see interest payments on their tax return, and they didn't revolve the line of credit. And I go, well, what's going on here? Oh, I'll do it next year. I'll do it. But at that point, it's my job, being the relationship manager, understanding the business, understanding what's going on with the business, and 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to fight the battle. I'm going to term the loan out, or the line of credit out, and put you through a payment plan over a 3, 4, 5 year period to recoup the money that we lent you as a line. And then maybe the following year, we may extend a line of credit back to you, depending how you paid the loan, if you paid it down a little bit, what's going on with the business. But it's a line of credit. I always say everybody should have a line of credit, because it's in case of an emergency, just like the surety bond. If someone doesn't pay, someone's going to pay and you continue operating. The line of credit's there for the same reason. If your contractor doesn't pay and you're a subcontractor, you can't pay all your employees. you've got a line of credit there to help you out until you resolve that issue. And again, it's a minimum payment that you're paying, which is interest only, to help so cash flow can continue, and hopefully you recoup your money, whether it's from a surety bond or the sub pays you or the contractor pays you.
Okay, and there's, of course, the question, what are the requirements for a business to apply for a loan?
So for a loan, it's again, we want to see two. Well, in most cases, every loan requirement is going to be a little different, but most cases it's going to be at least 1 year tax returns, personal and business. If you're a brand new startup company, we're going to want to see 2 years personal tax returns. I like to see a profit loss. I like to see the balance sheet. And my favorite one is the aging report. The aging report tells us how fast you recoup your funds. And anything over 90 days in the bank world is considered a loss. So a lot of small companies don't have a grasp on their collections of funds. And I'll ask for the profit loss to see, and I get so many funny pieces of paper with this and that on it. And I explain to them, I go, listen, you've got to get a grasp on this. No, you're not lendable if you don't recoup your cost within 60 days. That 90-day mark is the cutoff. You could be making $1 million, but if you're collecting it after 90 days, you're only making 250, we'll say, because that's what you're collecting within a 60-day period. So that's my favorite report to look at. I like to see a business plan to see what the thought process is, so that I can ask questions around it to know how well do you know your business? How well do you know this business plan? How was this thought out? Was this an AI generated business plan? You have no clue about it. So a lot of times it's not necessary, but it's something I like to see just as a startup company for my confidence. Again, it's relationship based. Brand new companies, there's no history